Well, welcome to the 700 Club. When I first went to China, there were no cars on the road. Everybody rode bicycles. The only clothes that men had was either a gray mouse suit or a blue mouse suit. I went to a trade fair, and all I saw was primitive pieces of machinery. It was an unbelievably backwards society. And now what's happening? It's real, and it's here. The most complex, pernicious, aggressive threat our nation has ever faced. What is it? The long arm of China. Yesterday, the Senate Intelligence Committee revealed alarming new evidence of China's pervasive penetration into almost every area of American life. And what's even a greater danger, their nuclear arsenal. Listen, they claim to have at least 350 warheads that the Pentagon expects to double over the next decade. I can't believe the transformation that's happened in these last 30 years. Here's George Thomas with the shocking details.
New satellite images show a major expansion of China's missile program.
Xi Jinping has one goal: to be the geopolitical, military, and economic leader in the world, period.
Researchers with the Federation of American Scientists uncovered 250 suspected nuclear missile silos, represented in this image by dots. They're under construction in a desert in China's western Xinjiang province. That's the same region where human rights groups believe Beijing is holding more than 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in massive concentration camps as part of the communist government's genocide against the ethnic minority group.
The members of this committee because of the role they play, have a very unique insight into this horror show that's playing out before our eyes in the 21st century.
Images taken of a vast site in northern China also reveal multiple silos under construction. They would likely house intercontinental ballistic missiles, with each capable of carrying multiple warheads.
The men and women of U.S. Strategic Command are always ready.
U.S. Strategic Command, overseer of America's nuclear arsenal, responded to these alarming revelations, tweeting, "The public has discovered what we have been saying all along about the growing threat the world faces and the veil of secrecy that surrounds it." China already has 350 nuclear warheads, an arsenal the Pentagon believes will double over the next decade.
This rapid buildup has become more difficult to hide, and it highlights how the PRC appears, again, to be deviating from decades of nuclear strategy based around minimum deterrence.
It's more evidence of China's increasingly assertive military ambitions under President Xi Jinping.
He is deadly earnest about becoming the most powerful military force in the world, as well as the largest and most prominent economy in the world by the mid-40s, 2040s. It's real.
China's growing nuclear stockpile, just one of many threats highlighted by a Senate Select Intelligence Committee hearing Wednesday.
China is focusing on targeting key U.S. technologies for both acquisition and development. These include aerospace, advanced manufacturing, AI, biotech, data analytics, semiconductors, renewables, all in order to ensure PRC's future dominance in these areas.
Committee members heard witnesses tell how China is burrowing into almost every facet of American life, from academia to Hollywood and private enterprises to state and local governments. Experts say Beijing's influence runs deep and wide.
The title of this hearing is The Long Arm of China. The long arm of China is not some futuristic threat. It's already here.
A former high-ranking official with our nation's counterintelligence community calling China America's greatest existential threat.
And it is the most complex, pernicious, aggressive, and strategic threat our nation has ever faced.
It is time to wake up. Today, China is already carrying out the biggest illegal wealth transfer from one nation to another in the history of mankind.
Primarily through American technology and intellectual property.
They have weaponized our openness. They have weaponized our decency, and they have weaponized a corporate lust for profits against us.
Following Wednesday's hearing, Senator Rubio reintroduced a bipartisan bill to combat China's political influence operations in the United States and around the world. Senator Rubio saying our nation, quote, must have the tools necessary to combat Beijing's malicious and coercive political influence. Pat?
George, we hear the rhetoric, but what is the Biden administration actually doing to counter China's global advances?
Yeah, Pat, one way the administration is attempting to counter China's advances is to encourage European nations and Japan to counter Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Pat, as you know, China has been on a spending spree in recent years, lending and investing hundreds of billions of dollars to help developing nations across Africa, Latin America, Asia, and in fact also Europe. The president is urging wealthy nations to offer an alternative to Beijing's initiative. But it has been a tough sell, though. There is deep disagreement among the United States and its allies about how to respond to China's rising power. But the president has been clear. He has framed China's rise as a fundamental struggle between democracies and autocracies.
George, what's the flashpoint? What part of the world should we be watching?
Yeah, Pat, American officials fear that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is closer than we think. China's government regards the island as a renegade state and has repeatedly vowed to take it back by force if necessary. Beijing continues to stage war games off the coast of Taiwan in what is widely seen as a dress rehearsal for an invasion. Pat, by the way, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General John Hyten, said recently that the United States, his words, failed miserably after U.S. forces staged a fake battle over Taiwan. To quote the general, he said an aggressive red team that had been studying the United States for the last 20 years just ran rings around us. They knew exactly what we were going to do before we did it. The blue team, they lost access to its entire networks almost immediately.
It's frightening. Well, one of the greatest threats is a cyber attack. Are we ready for a cyber attack?
Well, according to a new report, Pat, from the Senate Homeland Security Committee, we are not. It found federal agencies tasked with securing sensitive data have failed to implement some of the most basic defenses against cyber attacks. 8 agencies, including the State Department, Social Security Administration, and Department of Homeland Security, were evaluated, graded, and given so-called report cards. Well, most of them got C's and D's. Only DHS showed improvement over the last 2 years. Clear evidence, as we have been talking on this show, that personal information of millions of Americans continue to be at grave risk.
It's frightening. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States, the greatest nation on earth, but our liberties that all of us enjoy are under attack, and it looks like we're frittering it away. What are we spending our time on? We're spending our time on the impeachment of a governor in New York. We're spending our time watching news. We're spending our time on all this fluff we're arguing about, while at the same time, our enemies are building up to destroy us. Man, in other news, pressure from within his own party. Is that what drove the president to announce a 60-day freeze on eviction from areas hit by the hardest by COVID? And is such a thing even legal? CBN News correspondent Brody Carter has the answers.
Pat, after initially deciding it had no authority to extend the moratorium, the White House then exercised a controversial show of executive power. Now that the president ordered new protections, critics argue he's not only overstepping his power, Pat, he's breaking his oath of office.
This eviction moratorium by the Centers for Disease Control is unlawful and it's unconstitutional because the CDC does not have the power to impose such a moratorium. Congress never gave the CDC that power.
Biden, however, faced criticism and political theater within his own party, like Cori Bush sleeping on the Capitol steps, demanding the government act swiftly to save lives.
It's our work as humans to end human suffering and then to fight against any place where we see the possible perpetuation of it.
So the administration had the CDC issue a new moratorium rather than go against the Supreme Court ruling that there could not be a fourth extension.
The
Bulk of the constitutional scholarship says that it's not likely to pass constitutional muster, number one. But there are several key scholars who think that it may, and it's worth the effort.
Despite this move, billions of unspent dollars in federal aid remain available. Virginia working to spend that cash, giving out $223 million to tenants and landlords in need. Well, at homeless shelters like Union Mission here in Norfolk, Virginia, it's close to full capacity. Now, even though the president initiated another 60 days, hopeful to give protections to people set to lose their homes, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's smooth sailing from here.
You're more than your address. And so when someone's homeless, a profound impact has come upon that person or that family and the extended family.
With nearly 3.5 million evictions filed each year in non-pandemic years, Reverend John Gray with Union Mission knows all too well the toll homelessness has on people they serve.
Saved my life is saving lives. I mean, what they do here is wonderful.
John Haley currently trying to get out of this situation.
I think it's like organizing in your head what you have to do, steps to get out of that situation, quieting your mind. This is a great place to quiet your mind.
Well, your heart certainly goes out to the homeless, and after living on the streets of Washington, D.C., John knows he's one of the lucky ones getting help. He understands millions of Americans will soon face the same fate of living on the streets. And now homeless shelters and ministries, they face the same 60-day deadline to prepare for a possible rise in the homeless population seeking refuge. Pat?
Brody, we've had COVID and now the potential for a mass of homeless people. You've got the Union Mission. Are they coping properly with these challenges?
They certainly are, Pat. It's faith over fear. When I think of the Bible verse that comes to mind, Psalm 34:4, I sought the Lord, he answered me, and he rescued from all my fears. That seems to be how the mission is operating, Pat, at this point in time. Obviously looking for creative housing options for the future. We've only got 60 days to get our ducks in a row, so to speak, Pat, but the mission occupancy is down 50% due to COVID-19. They have every reason in the world, Pat, to be fearful, but they're holding on to that faith as they move forward with the coming days. And at the end of the day, it is faith over fear. They've been serving the community since the 1890s. And now Reverend Gray, he told me that at this point in time, he understands God has brought them through so much. So what's to say God isn't going to do it again? Pat?
Well, he will do it. Thank you, Brody. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to realize one of the fundamental rights we have in the United States is to own property. And if you take away the right of a landlord to collect rents, what is the landlord going to do? Say the guy's got a two-family home and he lives in one half of it, but he needs the rent to pay his mortgage. So the Biden administration says, I'm sorry, we're going to cancel your right to collect rent. So he loses his property. And all across America, there would be economic chaos. And then who would want to rent? That's the thing. Why would you let some squatter come into your house, into your apartment, into your dwelling, if indeed you couldn't throw him out? And so it's going to ultimately hurt the poor and the less fortunate, but it's going to destroy the housing of America. You cannot violate the Constitution. And the Biden administration says, well, we'll find a few scholars who maybe think we can, and then we'll act on them. You don't do that when the Supreme Court has made it clear it's wrong.